90 million Americans are expected to vote in today's elections. Polls have closed in many states on the East Coast and in the Midwest, but the final ballots are still being cast on the West Coast, and we'll try not to spoil it for them. Both parties are anxiously awaiting those results from those in-between swing states. You're watching News OK's live coverage of the 2012 elections. This is The Ballot, and I'm Dave Morris. As of 8 o'clock this evening, President Barack Obama trailing GOP candidate Mitt Romney by 3 electoral votes. Romney 67, President Obama has 64 electoral votes. It's early. I'm joined now by Washington Bureau correspondent Chris Casteel, along with the Oklahoman's Michael McNutt, Megan Rolland. This is a Google Hangout. It's pretty cool. And Rick Green, local editor for the Oklahoman, is with us as well. Chris, let's start with you. Polls in Florida, Virginia, Ohio, and New Hampshire are now closed. But what kind of numbers or early results are we seeing from these swing states? Again, it's early, but what are we seeing?
Yeah, it's really early. Except in Florida, they've got about almost 65% of the vote counted. Really tight there, nail biter. Obama is up 50-49 in Ohio. I think they've got about a quarter of the votes counted. Obama's got a pretty healthy lead there. It's really early. Virginia, the state where I live, polls closed at 7 o'clock Eastern, but there are still so many people in line that they are still voting. They could be voting till 10 o'clock in Virginia. Very, very little of the votes counted there. There's been all this concern about Ohio, going all night, maybe even do a recount. It could be Virginia that we don't know for many hours.
Let's talk about that a little bit, Chris. You're exactly right. It's a very close presidential race, and some experts are saying it could be well after midnight until we know who's president, if we even know. But there's some concern that new voter ID laws and close races in those swing states could hold up some of the results. Will we have a result by the end of the day?
I don't, that's the question everybody's wondering, right? And as I said, a lot of the attention is focused on Ohio, but I don't even know if we'll have results by midnight Eastern time in Virginia. I mean, it's so close there. You've had people standing in line for 4 hours waiting, in some precincts that have very few voting machines. Even in my neighborhood, the waits for, I think they had more than that in voting machines, but it was just hours long. So, I mean, it could be 10 o'clock, here before people even stop voting in Virginia. Same thing is happening in D.C.
You updated on our site two of the judges who have been nominated by Obama. They're not necessarily on the ballot, but whoever wins, Obama or Romney, greatly affects whether they have jobs.
That's absolutely correct. There's a U.S. Magistrate Judge, Robert E. Bacharach. He's a magistrate judge in Oklahoma City. He's been nominated for a 10th Circuit Court of Appeals seat. That's a step below the Supreme Court. And Johnny Dowdell out of Tulsa, he's an attorney there, been nominated for a district judgeship in Tulsa. They were held up by Republicans because of the presidential race. And if the president wins a second term, they'll sail right through. They have bipartisan support in the Senate. It's just a political maneuver. But if Mitt Romney wins, they may not get those positions. It may be up to Mitt Romney to nominate his own people for those jobs.
Very interesting night. Lots of things in play tonight. Chris Casteel, we know you're a busy man. We'll let you get back to it. Thanks so much for your time tonight.
Thank you, Dave.
Let's go a little bit more local, if you will. Our local editor, Rick Green, joining us. And Rick, there are some U.S. congressional races in all 5 districts in Oklahoma. Any indication on how these races are turning out?
Well, it's still really early, and from the very early vote count we see, there's nothing to indicate that the whole delegation won't go Republican, and that's kind of what it's looking like it'll be tonight. Boren's seat is the only one that's really in play, and just some very early numbers indicate that that's a seat that could go Republican.
State House Republicans could reclaim their record high level of 770. Megan, we're going to come to you now. They could also claim a few more seats that have traditionally been held by Democrats because of redistricting. Actually, I'm coming to you, Michael McNutt, the man with the best-looking beard in this Google Hangout. And Michael, you're following these races. What kind of impact could these elections have on the local political scene?
Well, Dave, as you mentioned, the House of Representatives, Republicans do hope to get back to at least 70, which they achieved a record high mark 2 years ago. We had one death and a couple of vacancies that weren't filled. They're down to 67 now. But all indications, early voting, and again, we don't have just a handful of counties results coming in. The big counties, we haven't received any results yet because I think, not quite like in Virginia, like Chris was talking about, I think we still have some voters still voting in some of these precincts. But all the early indications, early voting and absentee voting, Republicans are doing very well. even in some of the Republican incumbent districts where there was some concern. Cockcroft's off to an early lead. Bennett's doing pretty well in southern Oklahoma. And the Republicans doing well in some of these open seats. For instance, District 32, a seat held by the former minority leader, Danny Morgan, the Democratic seat. The Republican challenger, the candidate, is ahead right now. And so we're seeing the same things in some other open seats. The Republicans are doing pretty well. The Democratic incumbents look like they're holding on, so I think the Democratic incumbents should all hold on to their seats. But these open seats, it looks like they're shifting toward Republican. How many will go, we don't know. Some are thinking it could go as high as 75, Dave.
Michael, we appreciate your time tonight. Hey, where are you joining us from tonight?
State Capitol.
He's busy at the State Capitol, ladies and gentlemen. Chris Casteel, of course, was at the Washington Examiner's newsroom from the nation's capital. Rick Green was in the Oklahoman's newsroom, and now we'll go to Megan Rolland, who's also in the Oklahoman's newsroom. And you're following some of the state Senate races, Megan. What are you seeing?
Similar to in the House, it looks like Republicans are taking an early lead, even in some of those races where, it's a Democratic stronghold. We'll have to wait and see how that turns out. Down in Norman, it's an interesting Senate race, and it looks like it's going to be real close. It's Senate District 15 down there, between Rob Standridge and Claudia Griffith, and less than 200 votes separate them, with just a couple precincts in, but that'll be an interesting one to follow.
Those of us who voted today, we saw the state questions on the ballot, and they presented Oklahoma voters with some difficult decisions. Proposals included the governor's role in the parole process, affirmative action, and the governing commission of the State Department of Human Services. And Megan, the Oklahoman endorsed all 6 proposals, but are there any indications that all 6 resolutions will pass?
Actually, at this point in time, it looks like all 6 might have a good chance at passing. There's only about 100 precincts in across the state, but they've taken a commanding lead, about 60% approval rating, including the controversial state question 766, the intangible property tax. I know lots of people have heard about that one on the radio and television ads going around, and that has 64% approval rating right now with about 112 precincts in.
It's a busy night in the Oklahoman and in the Oklahoman's newsroom, and let me say thanks to Megan Rolland, Rick Green from the Oklahoman's newsroom, Michael McNutt down at the State Capitol, and of course Chris Casteel in the nation's capital. There's already a little chatter about the next presidential election, believe it or not, in 2016, and we've collected some of your nominations for that race. And we're putting those candidates to a vote. On Wednesday, we'll create a spoof newspaper front page that highlights the winner and the loser of this 2016 reader election, so that's going to be fun. Still more to come this evening on NewsOK.com. We'll return at 9 p.m. with another update on the presidential race, and we'll take a closer look at some of those county races. You can also follow us on Twitter throughout the evening. That's at NewsOKPolitics. You see it right there. Once again, we'll leave you with a look at today's political events through the lenses of the Oklahoman's photographers.